Hey guys, we recently passed 500 subscribers to the channel, and I asked if you guys had any questions you wanted me to answer. I had a couple of submissions, and so I wanted to throw those together in a video. Thank you so much to everyone who put in a question. If you guys have questions you want me to answer in another one of these videos, definitely leave a comment below and let me know. But yeah, we're going to dive right into it. So the first question that we had was what/who got you into reading? And the answer for this is super simple. It was my mom. I was homeschooled, and so my mom was my teacher. So she's technically who taught me how to read. But also my mom has just always been a reader. And so she is the one who supplied me with good books when I was young and just encouraged me in my reading. So the kind of story of that is that when I started school, before I was technically even like starting school, I just remember I so badly wanted to be able to read my mom's Bible. She had a red leather NASB Bible, and she would be doing homeschool with my two older sisters. And before she was even doing anything with me, I would just come up. We had like a third level in our house, and I would come up and I would sit on the little landing of the stairs, and I would sit there with this red leather Bible, and I would just flip through the pages. And she always jokes that like I taught myself how to read because I just wanted to, like, so badly. Like ever since I could remember, I just like was fascinated by this book and that there were words in it and that I could read them and know what it said. So yeah, kind of and I guess the third piece of that would be my granddad. I'm Paige Kent Gordon II. My granddad is Paige Kent Gordon I, and he is a voracious reader. I would love to do a video with him on here. He's 92 now and he still reads 80 plus books a year. And so he's just a voracious reader. So technically it's probably just in my blood, I guess. But yeah, between mom, granddad, and the Bible, that was what got me into reading. So then the next question that leads into is, what books did you like most as a kid? And this portion of the video could go on for forever, but I'm going to list a couple real quick, kind of in order of reading level. So one of the early ones that I loved was this is like the second or third one in the series, but the Mice of the Herringbone series. And these are super easy readers, 10 chapters or whatever, and just fun illustrations and everything. But I remember these being some of the first books that I just loved, like I couldn't get enough of. I loved Charles and Oliver. They're the two mice, and just the adventures that they go on were just so satisfying to me. And they were so wild and crazy. And they get in coconut shells and they get shot through the cannons, onto the beach to rescue the captain and everything. And so the Mice of the Herringbone series was definitely one of the earliest ones. Kind of on top of that, a little bit higher reading level, the Hank the Cowdog books I adored as a kid. They were so funny, and we grew up farming and ranching and stuff, and so all of the cowboy stuff and all of the farming stuff made sense to me and whatever, and I just absolutely adored this series. Another book that really stuck out, definitely a little bit older, but my aunt and I read The Scarlet Pimpernel, which is a book set during the French Revolution, and it just captured my imagination like nothing else. Like just this intrigue of trying to escape the country and get away from the guillotine and all this stuff. I absolutely loved The Scarlet Pimpernel as a kid growing up. And then by far the two biggest influences of my reading as a kid was Will James and Louis L'Amour. And if you have not read Will James or Louis L'Amour, what are you doing with your life? Louis L'Amour is one of the most popular storytellers in the world. 300 million of his books in print, and he writes cowboy stories. And all I wanted to be in life growing up was a cowboy. And The Man Called Noon was the first one of his that I read that just swept me away. And I have been a Louis L'Amour addict ever since then. Will James also writes cowboy stories, and he was... Louis L'Amour was a cowboy in real life too. Will James was a legit cowboy in real life. And Will James also did the charcoal illustrations in all of his books. So just super great illustrations in all of these, and just really fun. Louis L'Amour is much more exciting and violence and gunslingers and whatever. And Will James is just straight cowboy life, horses, cattle, all the things. And yeah, so those were by far the two biggest influences on my reading growing up: Will James, Louis L'Amour. Loved them. Next up, we had, what is your favorite book of all time? That is literally an impossible question for me to answer. But if I was to say one at this point in my life and in my reading journey, I would say that How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler is my favorite book of all time. And it's because it's kind of like talking with people about marriage and how you have a good marriage. And what I tell people all the time is that if you can learn to communicate, then you can fix any problem, right? So communication is like the master key of like, well, if you know how to communicate, then you know how to work through any other problem that you have. So everything else kind of falls under your ability to communicate. That's how I feel about How to Read a Book. This book is the best thing that I have ever read for teaching you strategically and tactilely, the tactics of how to become a good reader. And if you become a good reader, then every book in the world is opened up to you, right? And if you don't, then there's books that you aren't going to be able to access because they're just not accessible unless you are a good reader. And so if I had to choose favorite book of all time, I would say this for those reasons. Next up, second to last, we had your number one recommendation for people. Again, this is like almost impossible to answer, but I would divide this into my number one fiction recommendation and my number one nonfiction recommendation. And my criteria are literally, what is a book that I could, not knowing anything about the person, say, read this, and even if you don't like it, I guarantee it would be good for you if you read it. That's kind of the criteria that I'm working with here. So my fiction number one recommendation would be A Tale of Three Kings. This book is one of the most powerful stories I have ever read, and it contains one of the most powerful messages in all of the Christian life, in my opinion, which is this idea that you can't know someone else's heart. Only God knows, and God doesn't tell. So focus on your own heart and get your own heart right before God, and take the log out of your eye before dealing with the speck in your neighbor's eye. And it's super short, super quick read. Anybody could read it. And it is a message that if you will let it and you don't harden your heart to it, I guarantee you it will change your life. So that would be my number one fiction recommendation, A Tale of Three Kings by Gene Edwards. And then my number one nonfiction recommendation would be The Road Back to You by Ian Morgan Cron. I've read multiple Enneagram books at this point, and this is not, I would not call this book the best Enneagram book that I have read. That definitely right now goes to The Sacred Enneagram by Christopher Hewarts. That book fundamentally changed my entire life. But the Enneagram in and of itself is the most helpful tool I have ever come across for self-reflection and understanding who God made me and how I'm wired. And I think this book is the best introduction to the Enneagram of all the other books that I've read. So that would be my number one fiction recommendation. And then the final question was kind of a bonus one that I had from somebody, but they were asking, what church do you follow? What church do you go to? So I grew up in the Methodist tradition at a small Methodist church in Pagosa Springs in Colorado, and then had gone to a couple different churches, moving on through that, spent a lot of years at a non-denominational church in Colorado. And then now we live in Tennessee, and I actually attend the Belonging Company, which technically I think is another non-denominational church. But I'm going to link in the description just a link to their website of their creeds and kind of what they believe and everything. That's all I got for today. If you guys liked this, let me know, leave me a comment. And if you have other questions, I would love to answer them. I'd love to dig into some more stuff with you. And yeah, that's all I got. So leave a like, all the things, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.